All right, guys, we're still out here in Nice, France, so it's very casual video today. I want to talk a little bit about communication, but communication as it comes to, a little bit of what I would call addiction recovery and understanding who we are as beings, as humans, and as spiritual beings. So, the first thing I want to start off with is a great. It's not a quote, it's a habit from Stephen Covey's book, The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's seek to understand before being understood. And I think a lot of times, what Stephen Covey teaches in this principle is that a lot of times we want to listen, we want to communicate, and we want to do that in order to respond immediately. I know I'm guilty of that. How many of you guys are guilty of listening to somebody and in your head, especially guys, we're always looking for a solution? At least I am. I'm always looking for a solution. Like someone's talking to me, my partner or my friend or my daughter, my kid, I'm always looking for a solution. What is they're trying to communicate to me, and what problem can I solve for them? Because again, I'm a people pleaser in my codependency, right? So I'm always looking, and I never really listen to understand. And then so we get into these arguments sometimes, or you start to argue with people because you're no longer listening to them. You're just hearing them and responding to them, and that's hurting our communication. And so what ends up happening a lot of times is we have a fear of being judged and not being understood. So these fears start to create learned behaviors within us, right? Codependency, coping mechanisms, if you will. And our communication is what tends to start creating these coping mechanisms or these learned behaviors. And in communication, what we have to understand is a lot of times nonverbal communication is most of our communications, probably about 90%. And if we look at that, so think of yourself when you're talking to your partner, your spouse, your husband, your wife, a boyfriend, girlfriend, a coworker, whoever it may be. What is your nonverbal communication? What messages are you sending to the person you're communicating with? And sometimes what I learned is using this thing called reflective listening. What reflective listening is, it's our job, okay? It's our job to understand what is being said within our conversation. And it's a very simple phrase that you can use, and I hope you guys write this down, is just what I understand is. So if you're communicating with somebody, you're talking to somebody, sometimes they may not be getting their point across to you, your point of view, or you might not be understanding what they're saying. And so you can say, what I understand is so and so, and explain it to them. They can maybe come back and say, yes, that's exactly what I mean. Or they might come back and say, no, that's not what I mean at all. Is that what you're understanding? And try not to get frustrated with it, just like they shouldn't get frustrated. But it is our job to understand before being understood, okay? And you have to understand, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to ask questions in conversations. It's okay to give answers. That's what a conversation is about. If you're fearful to communicate, it's because that relationship has some other tension in it. And we have to figure out what that problem is and how do we solve that problem. A lot of times we don't recognize the situation. It's not a clear situation. So you don't know what's going on, you don't know what's being said, you don't understand how to communicate with that person. So a lot of times as well in problems is different problems have different layers, right? So think of an onion, and you think of a problem and you start looking at it, and you might have a solution that solves a problem for a time being, maybe like in the workplace, right? You're thinking of a solution, you think of a solution, you come up with it, you implement it, and you start looking at it and you say, okay, well, that was a good solution, but now we have another problem. So it's not the end of the world if that ends up happening. We have to understand that whether you're the receiver or the sender of the communication, is just because you solve the problem one time doesn't mean new situations or new information is not going to come into it, and a plan's going to go awry and you have to come up with some other solution. So be open to that. Just like learning is done in layers, problem solving is done in layers. And then lastly, guys, with this is learn to communicate what you feel. What we're feeling, what we're understanding, it's hard sometimes to get through those emotions, that emotional tension. Sometimes you have to sit there and process and understand, and it's okay. It's okay to sit in that emotion, and what you have to do is live it, experience it, and understand that it's just that moment of, you know, shame that you might be feeling, or of guilt that you might be feeling. Figure out what you need to do in that time, and those emotions will pass. Give it 15-20 minutes. Don't make a decision on your communication. Think of think of the solution, think of the problem, feel it, understand the emotions, and you will learn when you're ready. That's all you have to understand, is you will learn when you're ready. And the problem has layers, solutions has layers, learning has layers. Our nonverbal communication is key in understanding how to understand others. And remember, reflective listening, what I understand will help you immensely in communicating, in bettering your communication skills. So guys, I know this has been a long video. Super happy to be here with you guys. Go on to the other modules, check it out. There's amazing content in this IX global platform. Thanks guys, see you guys soon.